The salvage ship Prosperity's Edge moved slowly through the purple clouds of the Void Nebula. Captain Zakth clicked his mandibles as he watched the scanner screens. His insect-like eyes studied the readings with growing interest. Something big was hiding in the cosmic dust ahead. "Captain, we're getting strange readings," said Pilot Kresh, her crystal body glowing soft blue with excitement. The Zilani were always eager to find new treasures in the void. "It's massive. 3 times the size of a coalition dreadnought." Zakth's 4 arms worked the controls. The Cathera were known throughout the galaxy as the best salvagers. They could strip a dead ship clean in hours and sell every bolt. But this reading was different. Whatever waited in the nebula was huge beyond anything they had ever found. "Bring us closer," he ordered, "but keep the shields up." The Prosperity's Edge pushed through the purple mist. Slowly, a shape emerged from the cosmic fog. Kresh gasped, her crystal form flashing bright yellow with surprise. Even Zakth stopped clicking his mandibles. A ship floated before them. But calling it a ship was like calling a mountain a rock. The vessel stretched nearly 3 kilometers from nose to tail. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, covered in strange patterns that seemed to eat light. Weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some sleeping beast. "By the void," whispered Kresh. "What is that thing?" Zakth checked his databases. The ship's design matched nothing in Coalition records. The hull material was unknown. The construction style was completely alien. But something about those geometric patterns made his chitin crawl with unease. "Run a deep scan," he ordered. The scanners worked for several minutes. The results made no sense. The ship was clearly ancient, maybe 200 years old. But it wasn't completely dead. Faint energy readings came from deep inside the hull. Life support systems were running on minimum power. Most disturbing of all, something was alive inside that dark ship. "Captain," Kresh said, her voice shaking, "I'm reading cryogenic pods, thousands of them, and they're active." Zakth felt his blood turn cold. He checked the star charts again. This sector had been quarantined for 200 years. The records were sealed, marked with the highest Coalition security codes. All he knew was that something called the human incident had happened here long ago. Humans. Zakth had heard whispers of them in the darkest corners of space stations. A species that had fought 3 galactic powers at once. Monsters that refused to surrender even when their homeworld burned. The Coalition claimed they were all dead now, wiped out for the good of the galaxy. But if this was a human ship, then the Coalition had lied. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Kresh. Zakth stared at the massive vessel. Coalition law said to report any human artifacts immediately. But human technology was worth more than entire star systems. The species had built weapons and ships that were still beyond galactic understanding. If he could salvage even a small part of that ship, he would be rich beyond imagination. "We board it," he decided. "Captain, that might not be wise. The energy readings are probably just automated systems," Zakth cut her off. "That ship has been dead for 2 centuries. Whatever was inside is long gone." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. The ship looked too perfect, too undamaged. It floated in space like it was waiting for something. They moved the Prosperity's Edge to the massive ship's docking bay. The bay doors were sealed shut, but Zakth's cutting tools made quick work of them. As the doors opened, lights flickered on inside the bay, ancient but functional. "Someone designed this ship to last," Kresh noted. They put on their environmental suits and crossed into the human ship. The docking bay was enormous, easily big enough to hold 100 Coalition fighters, but it was empty except for some strange mechanical arms hanging from the ceiling. The walls were covered in symbols that hurt Zakth's eyes to look at. Human writing was angular and sharp, like their weapons. Warning signs were everywhere, written, in red letters that seemed to glow in the dim light. "Can you read any of this?" he asked Kresh. The Zilani could learn any language in minutes. Her crystal body pulsed as she processed the symbols. "Some of it. This says, authorized personnel. Only. And this one says, danger high energy systems. But Captain, this word here appears over and over. I think it's the ship's name. What is it?" "Indomitable." As soon as she spoke the word, something changed. Deep in the ship, systems that had slept for 200 years began to wake up. Lights came on in sections they couldn't see. Computers started running diagnostics on weapons that could crack moons in half. And in the ship's core, thousands of cryogenic pods began their warming cycles. Zakth felt vibrations through the deck plates. The ship was coming alive around them. "We need to get back to our ship," he said. But when they reached the docking bay, the massive doors had sealed themselves shut. They were trapped inside the human ship. "Captain, I'm reading massive power spikes throughout the vessel," Kresh said, checking her scanner. "This ship isn't dead. It was sleeping." More lights came on around them. The warning symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. And from somewhere deep in the ship's belly, they heard the sound of massive machinery starting. Zakth tried his communicator. Static filled the channel. The ship was jamming all their signals. No one would know what had happened to them. A screen on the wall flickered to life. Human text scrolled across it too fast to read. But some words were repeated over and over. "Emergency revival protocol. All hands to stations. Combat alert status." And at the bottom of the screen, coordinates that made Zakth's chitin turn white with fear. The ship knew exactly where it was. It knew how long it had been sleeping. And now it was waking up to find strangers aboard. "Kresh," he whispered. "I think we've made a terrible mistake." The lights around them grew brighter. And from deep in the ship they heard the sound of footsteps. Heavy boots on metal decking getting closer. The humans were waking up. And they would want to know who had disturbed their sleep. Zakth had spent his life salvaging dead ships. But this ship wasn't dead. It had been waiting, 200 years in the dark, planning and dreaming of revenge. The Coalition had claimed victory over humanity long ago. They had built their galactic government on the ashes of human worlds. But they had missed one ship, one sleeping giant, that remembered everything. And now it was time to wake up. The footsteps grew closer. Zakth and Kresh huddled together in the massive docking bay, surrounded by the awakening might of humanity's last supercarrier. They had come looking for salvage, and found something far more dangerous. They had found humanity's revenge. Deep inside the massive ship, Commander Sarah Chen felt the cold leaving her body. The cryogenic pod's heating elements warmed her slowly, bringing her back from the edge of death. Her eyes opened to soft blue light and the gentle hum of life. "Support systems." "Good morning, Commander," said a calm female voice. "You have been in hibernation for 203 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Sarah's mind was still foggy from the long sleep. The voice belonged to Athena, the ship's artificial intelligence. Slowly, memories came back. The war. Earth burning under alien bombardment. The desperate escape with 12,000 survivors crammed into the Indomitable. "Status report," Sarah croaked, her throat dry as sand. "All primary systems are online. We are currently in the Void Nebula. Coordinates match our planned hiding spot. However, we have visitors aboard." That woke Sarah up completely. "Intruders?" "Salvagers from the Galactic Coalition. 2 aliens who breached our docking bay 47 minutes ago. They appear to be trapped and frightened." Sarah sat up in her pod, feeling her muscles protest after the long sleep. The Coalition. She remembered that name from intelligence reports. The 3 alien powers that had united to destroy humanity. They had won the war, but they hadn't found all the ships. "How many of our people are awake?" "Revival protocols are progressing normally. Approximately 400 crew members have been awakened so far. The rest will be ready within 6 hours. Sarah climbed out of her pod and grabbed a uniform from the nearby locker. The fabric felt strange after so many years. Around her, other pods were opening. Men and women she had served with were returning to life, blinking in the soft light. "Captain Chen," called Lieutenant Williams, a young officer who had barely escaped Earth's destruction. "Are we safe?" "For now," Sarah replied. "But we have a lot to learn about what's happened while we slept." She made her way to the bridge, passing through corridors that were coming alive around her. The Indomitable had been built as a colony ship, designed to carry thousands of families to a new world. But when the war began, they had converted her into something else. A mobile fortress. A supercarrier that could build her own fighters and weapons. The bridge was a cathedral of screens and displays. Athena's core processors filled one wall with their soft blue glow. As Sarah took her command chair, the ship's AI began her full briefing. "Earth was destroyed 6 months after we entered hibernation," Athena reported. "The last human colony fell 3 years later. According to Coalition records, humanity is officially extinct." Sarah closed her eyes. She had known this day would come, but it still hurt. Earth, with its blue oceans and white clouds, was gone forever. But the pain quickly turned to something else. Anger. What about our allies? The Cathari? The Free Traders Union? The Coalition absorbed or relocated all species that it supported humanity. Many were branded as corrupted by human influence and sent to prison worlds. The bridge doors opened and more officers arrived. Major Torres from the Marines, Dr. Kim from Medical, Engineer Patel who had kept their systems running during the desperate escape from Seoul. All of them looked older, marked by the war they had fought. "Orders, Captain?" asked Torres. Sarah studied the tactical display. The Coalition salvage ship was tiny compared to the Indomitable, but it carried valuable information. Data about the galaxy as it existed now. About the powers that ruled in humanity's absence. "Bring our guests to Conference Room A," she decided. "Full security escort, but treat them well. We need to know what the galaxy looks like now, and if they try to signal for help. Athena is jamming all communications. No signals leave this ship until I decide otherwise." While her crew prepared to receive their unexpected guests, Sarah walked through the ship's corridors. The Indomitable was more than just a warship. She was a piece of human civilization, preserved in metal and dreams. Hydroponics bays that could feed thousands. Manufacturing centers that could build anything from a fighter plane to a child's toy. Schools and parks and libraries filled with the knowledge of a dead world. 12,000 people had gone to sleep in these halls. Families, children, scientists, artists, everyone who had refused evacuation when the end came. They had chosen to sleep rather than surrender, betting everything on the hope that someday they could wake up and rebuild. Now that day had come. "Captain," Athena announced, "our guests are secured in Conference Room A. They appear quite frightened." Sarah made her way to the conference room. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see two aliens sitting at the large table. One looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and compound eyes. The other was made of living crystal, her body glowing with nervous energy. Security Chief Rodriguez stood guard with 2 Marines. "They're clean, Captain. No weapons, no hidden transmitters, just standard salvage equipment." Sarah entered the room. The aliens looked up at her with obvious fear. They had probably heard stories about humans. Monster tales told by the victors of a war. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Indomitable," she said, keeping her voice calm. "You are Captain Zakth and Pilot Kresh of the vessel Prosperity's Edge. Welcome aboard." The insect alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. Fear pheromones filled the air. "Please," he said in broken standard Galactic. "We meant no harm. We are simple salvagers. We did not know this was a human ship." "Relax, Captain Zakth. You are our guests, not our prisoners. We simply need information." Sarah sat across from them. "Tell me about the galaxy. What has happened in the 200 years since Earth fell?" For the next hour, the aliens told her everything. About the galactic coalition that ruled most of known space. About how human history had been erased from the records. About the species that had been relocated for helping humanity. About the peace that had come to the galaxy after the human threat was eliminated. With each word, Sarah's anger grew colder and more focused. The coalition had not just won a war, they had committed genocide and called it justice. They had rewritten history to make themselves heroes and humanity monsters. "One more question," Sarah said finally. "How many ships does the coalition have?" "Thousands," Kresh answered, her crystal body dim with worry. "The combined fleet has over 10,000 vessels, dreadnoughts that can crack moons, fighter wings that block out stars." Sarah smiled, but it was not a kind expression. "Thank you. That's very helpful." She stood and called for her officers. "Escort our guests to comfortable quarters. Give them whatever they need, but they remain aboard until further notice." When the aliens were gone, Sarah turned to her command staff. "Gentlemen, ladies, we have work to do. Athena, what is the status of our manufacturing capabilities?" "All systems operational. We can begin producing fighters, weapons, and ammunition immediately." "Good. We've been asleep for 200 years. It's time to remind the galaxy that humanity doesn't stay down when you knock us over." The Indomitable was waking up fully now. Her factories hummed to life. Her weapon systems ran. Diagnostics. Deep in her hull, the sleeping families were beginning to stir. Humanity's last ship was preparing for war. The Prosperity's Edge sent one final transmission before its communications went dead. The message reached Coalition High Command 3 days later, carried by a data probe that had escaped the human ship's jamming. Admiral Vex High of the 3rd Fleet read the report with growing disbelief. His scaled hands trembled as he processed the impossible words. Humans. Alive. A massive warship hiding in the Void Nebula. "This is impossible," he hissed to his aide. "The humans were exterminated 200 years ago. Every ship accounted for. Every world burned clean. The salvage crew's final scan data is included, replied Commander Sisk, her reptilian features calm despite the shocking news. The vessel matches pre-war human construction, 3 kilometers long, massive weapons signatures. Admiral Vexhai had fought in the final battles of the human war when he was young. He remembered the desperate fury with which the hairless apes had fought. Ships ramming into dreadnoughts, colonies that chose to explode their reactors rather than surrender, a species that simply would not accept defeat. How many ships do we have in the sector? The Third Fleet has 200 vessels currently on patrol. 3 dreadnoughts, 50 cruisers, the rest destroyers and frigates. Assemble them all. Whatever human remnant is hiding in that nebula, we will finish what we started 2 centuries ago. While the Coalition prepared for battle, aboard the Indomitable, Commander Sarah Chen was learning the true scope of what her people faced. The ship's intelligence systems had spent days extracting every piece of data from the salvagers' computers. What they found painted a picture of a galaxy that had forgotten humanity ever existed. "Show me the historical records," Sarah ordered. Standing in the ship's main briefing room, Athena's holographic displays came to life. Images of burning human cities filled the air. Propaganda videos showing Coalition forces as liberators, freeing the galaxy from human aggression. Children's education programs that taught young aliens about the terrible war against the extinct monsters. "They've made us the villains of their story," said Major Torres, his weathered face grim. "Every history book, every documentary, every school lesson. We're the enemy that threatened galactic peace." "What about our allies?" asked Dr. Kim. "The species that fought beside us?" Athena switched to immigration records, forced relocation orders, prison colony manifests. The Cathari were declared corrupted by human contact and sent to mining worlds. The Free Traders Union was disbanded. Any species that had worked with humanity was either relocated or absorbed into Coalition territory. Sarah felt the weight of 200 years pressing down on her. Everyone they had known was dead or enslaved. Every world they had called home was under enemy control. The Indomitable and her 12,000 souls were all that remained of human civilization. "Captain," interrupted Chief Rodriguez from security, "our guests are asking to speak with you." Sarah found Captain Zakth and Pilot Kresh in their quarters. The aliens had been treated well, given food and entertainment, but they were clearly prisoners despite the comfortable cage. "Commander Chen," Zakth said, his mandibles clicking nervously. "We understand you must hate us. The Coalition destroyed your people. But please, we are just salvagers. We had nothing to do with the war." Sarah sat down across from them. "I don't hate you, Captain. You're victims of the Coalition's lies, just like everyone else. But I need to know something. Do you believe what they teach about humans, that we were monsters who threatened the galaxy?" Kresh's crystal body pulsed with uncertain colors. "The schools teach that humans were violent, that you would not accept peace, that you enslaved other species and forced them to fight for you. And what do you think now after meeting us?" The 2 aliens looked at each other. Zakth spoke first. "You could have killed us the moment we boarded your ship. Instead, you gave us food and comfortable rooms. You treat us with respect despite what our people did to yours." "The Coalition lied about many things," Kresh added quietly. "Perhaps they lied about this too." Sarah nodded. "They did. But soon they're going to send warships to destroy us. When that happens, you'll see the truth about who the real monsters are." She left the aliens to think about her words and returned to the bridge. All around the ship, her people were preparing for the inevitable battle. The manufacturing bays worked around the clock, building new fighters and weapons. The old colony ship was becoming a fortress. "Status report," Sarah ordered. "All revival pods are now empty," announced Dr. Kim. 12,000 souls awake and at their stations. Families are in the protected sectors. Combat personnel are ready. "Engineering reports all systems optimal," added Chief Patel. "We've manufactured 200 new fighters and enough ammunition for a prolonged engagement. The main guns are charged and ready." Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Indomitable was alone in the void, surrounded by the remnants of the nebula that had hidden them. Soon Coalition ships would arrive expecting to find a defenseless derelict. Instead, they would face the fury of humanity's last stand. "Athena, prepare a message for broadcast on all Coalition frequencies." "Ready, Commander." Sarah stood in front of the main display, her uniform crisp and her expression determined. Behind her, the bridge hummed with activity as her crew made final preparations. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Indomitable. For 200 years, the galaxy has believed that humanity was extinct. You were wrong. We survived. We endured. And we remember everything. She paused, letting the words sink in. We remember our allies who fought beside us. We remember the civilians who died when you burned our worlds. We remember the children who never got to grow up because you decided we were too dangerous to exist. Her voice grew harder. But we also remember who we are. We are the species that refused to kneel, the people who built ships that could cross the void and reach for the stars. We are humanity, and we are still here. The message would reach every coalition frequency in the sector. Every ship, every station, every world would hear humanity's voice speaking from the grave. To any species listening who remember the truth, who remember when humans and aliens worked together to build something better than war, know this. We offer you the same choice we offered 2 centuries ago. Stand with us as equals, or stay neutral and safe. The only thing we will not tolerate is the continuation of the Coalition's lies. Sarah looked directly into the camera. To the Coalition forces approaching our position, you tried to exterminate us once and thought you succeeded, but you missed one ship, one sleeping giant that remembers everything. You wanted to see human monsters? You're about to get your wish. The transmission ended. Throughout Coalition space, the impossible message spread from ship to ship, station to station. The dead had spoken, and they were angry. Admiral Vexhai received the transmission as his fleet assembled at the nebula's edge. 200 warships, enough to destroy entire star systems. But as he watched the human female's cold eyes, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the void between stars. All ships, he ordered. Battle formation. We finish this today. The Coalition had spent 2 centuries telling itself that humanity was extinct. They were about to discover that some things cannot be killed with fire and fusion. Some things only grow stronger in the dark, waiting for their moment to return. Humanity's moment had arrived. Admiral Vexhai's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Void Nebula, like a swarm of deadly stars. 200 ships spread across space in perfect battle formation. 3 massive dreadnoughts led the attack, their hulls bristling with enough firepower to crack planets. All ships report ready for combat, announced his tactical officer. Sensors show the target vessel holding position in the nebula's center. Through his ship's viewports, Vexhai could see the human vessel waiting for them. The Indomitable hung in space like a dark cathedral, her hull reflecting the purple light of the nebula. She looked ancient and powerful, a relic from humanity's darkest hour. That ship destroyed my salvage vessel, Vexhai muttered to his staff. 200 trained crew members, gone without a trace. These humans are exactly the monsters our history teaches us about. But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his voice. The human ship could have run when it detected his fleet approaching. Instead, it waited. 1 vessel against 200. Either the humans were insane, or they knew something he didn't. Admiral, called his communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from the human ship. The main display flickered to life, showing a human female in a crisp military uniform. Her eyes were cold as winter space, but her voice was calm and professional. Admiral Vexhai, I am Commander Sarah Chen. Before we begin this battle, I want to know one thing. What happened to the civilian transports? The evacuation ships that were promised safe passage when Earth surrendered? Vexhai felt his scales shift with discomfort. That information was sealed in the deepest Coalition archives. I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah's expression didn't change. The transport New Hope. 40,000 civilians, mostly children. The medical ship Mercy. The colony vessels Tomorrow and New Dawn. Where are they, Admiral? The bridge fell silent. Even Vexhai's own crew was watching him, waiting for an answer. Those ship names were from classified reports, battles that had been erased from official history. The Coalition does not negotiate with terrorists, he said finally. Sarah nodded slowly. I see. Athena, show the Admiral what we found in his salvage crew's database. The display changed. Historical records scrolled past, showing Coalition military reports from 2 centuries ago. Battle logs, casualty lists, orders to cleanse all human presence from the galaxy. The evacuation ships were destroyed while carrying white flags, Sarah continued. 40,000 children murdered because you were afraid they might grow up to be human. Medical ships blown apart while treating wounded civilians. You didn't just win a war, Admiral. You committed genocide. Vex-High's tactical officer leaned close to his ear. "Sir, we should attack now. That ship is alone and surrounded." But the admiral was staring at the record scrolling past. Reports he had helped write when he was a young officer. Orders he had followed without question. The Coalition had taught the galaxy that humans were monsters, but looking at these documents he wondered who the real monsters were. "You have 30 seconds to surrender," he broadcast. "Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Sarah's laugh was cold as space. "You still don't understand, do you, Admiral? We're not here to surrender. We're here to remind the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." The transmission ended. For a moment, space was perfectly quiet. Then the Indomitable opened fire. Her main gun spoke with the voice of thunder. Beams of pure energy lanced across space, striking the lead dreadnought with the force of a dying star. The massive Coalition ship's shields flared and died. Her hull cracked like an eggshell. "All ships attack!" Vex-High screamed. The Coalition fleet responded with fury. Hundreds of weapons fired at once, turning space into a web of deadly energy. But when the light faded, the human ship was still there, her shields glowing like a blue sun. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "Nothing could survive that barrage." Then the Indomitable's fighter bays opened. They unfolded like the petals of a deadly flower, revealing hangar after hangar filled with sleek interceptors. Hundreds of human fighters poured into space, their pilots veterans of the war that was supposed to have ended humanity. "This is Ghost Squadron, all fighters," came a voice over the Coalition frequencies. "Remember Earth. Remember the children. No mercy." The human fighters tore through Coalition formations like wolves among sheep. Their weapons were ancient but deadly, designed by a species that had learned to fight for survival. Coalition pilots, who had never faced anything more dangerous than pirates, suddenly found themselves fighting veterans who had battled 3 galactic powers at once. Lieutenant Sarah Kim dove her fighter through a cloud of Coalition destroyers, her guns speaking, rapid fire. The enemy ships were newer and faster, but their pilots had never fought anyone who truly wanted to kill them. Behind her flew the ghost of her younger brother, lost when Earth burned. Beside her flew the memory of her parents, vaporized when the Coalition bombed the evacuation centers. "Ghost leader to all fighters," she called. They wanted monsters. Let's show them what human monsters look like. The battle raged across the nebula. Coalition ships died in fire and fury, their crews screaming final messages home. The human fighters moved like deadly dancers, their every move coordinated by Athena's tactical network. But the Indomitable herself was the true terror. Her main guns reached across space to touch Coalition ships with death. Her point defense systems created walls of fire that no enemy fighter could penetrate. Her armor absorbed punishment that should have reduced her to scrap metal. "Admiral," called his damage control officer, "we've lost 40 ships. The dreadnought Triumphant is gone. Our fighters can't get close to that monster." Vex-High watched his fleet dying around him. Ships that had served the Coalition for centuries were burning wrecks. Crews he had trained were floating frozen in space. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships, retreat to hyperspace." But as his remaining ships turned to flee, the human commander's voice filled the communications channels again. "Running already, Admiral? But we're just getting started. This is what happens when you try to exterminate a species that refuses to die. This is what happens when you murder children and call it peace." More Coalition ships died as they tried to escape. Human fighters pursued them like avenging angels, their weapons riding humanity's fury across the stars. Of Admiral Vex-High's 200 ships, less than 50 made it to hyperspace. When the battle was over, the Indomitable floated alone in the nebula, surrounded by the wreckage of Coalition vessels. Her hull was scarred but unbroken. Her fighters returned to their bays like birds coming home to roost. On the bridge, Commander Sarah Chen stood before the tactical display. The first battle was over, but it was only the beginning. Throughout Coalition space, the impossible news was spreading. Humanity had returned from extinction, and they had destroyed the Third Fleet. Athena casualty report. 12 fighters lost, 47 crew members injured, no fatalities. Sarah nodded. Her people had been fighting for their lives for so long that battle came as naturally as breathing. The Coalition had forgotten how to fight a real war. They had grown soft on centuries of easy victories. "Signal all Coalition frequencies," she ordered. "Let them know we're coming." The message that went out was simple. Humanity was no longer hiding. The galaxy that had tried to erase them was about to remember why 3 galactic powers had needed to unite just to fight one small blue planet. The dead had risen and they were very, very angry. The news of the Third Fleet's destruction spread through Coalition space like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had been taught that humans were extinct monsters watched in shock as the impossible became real. The species that had been erased from history had returned with a vengeance. Admiral Vex High's battered survivors limped into Coalition High Command, their ships scarred and their crews traumatized. The reports they brought seemed like fiction. One human ship destroying an entire battle fleet. Fighters that moved like deadly ghosts. Weapons that burned through Coalition shields like they were made of paper. But the most disturbing part wasn't the battle itself. It was what came after. Commander Sarah Chen had kept her word. The Indomitable began a tour of the galaxy, visiting worlds where humans had once lived and worked. At each stop, she broadcast the same message to anyone willing to listen. "We are the species you were told was extinct," her voice carried across communication networks. "We are the monsters from your history lessons, but we are also the traders who brought you new technologies, the explorers who opened hyperspace routes to your worlds, the allies who fought beside you when the hegemony threatened your colonies." Standing in the observation deck of her massive ship, Sarah looked down at the planet Kethos. Once this world had been home to a thriving mixed colony. Humans and Kethari had worked together to build beautiful cities among the purple forests. Children of both species had played in the same parks, learned in the same schools. Now it was a prison world. The Kethari population had been declared corrupted by human contact and sentenced to labor camps. Their crime was friendship with humanity. "Captain," said Major Torres, joining her at the viewport. "The Coalition garrison is requesting permission to surrender. They're outgunned and they know it." Sarah nodded. "Accept their surrender, but I want to speak with the camp administrators first." An hour later, she stood in the prison camp's main office, facing a trembling Vagan administrator. The slug-like creature's skin was pale with fear as it looked at the human who had somehow returned from the dead. "Please," it begged. "We were just following orders. The Coalition said these people were dangerous. We gave them food and shelter." Sarah picked up a datapad from the desk. Medical records. Death certificates. The Kethari prisoners had been worked to death in the mining tunnels. Families separated. Children sent to re-education centers to forget their own culture. "How many died?" she asked quietly. I don't have exact numbers." "How many?" The administrator's whole body shook. Perhaps 30,000 over the past 50 years." Sarah closed her eyes. 30,000 Kethari dead because they had been humanity's friends. An entire civilization destroyed because they had committed the crime of trusting humans. "The camp is now under human protection," she announced. "The prisoners will be freed immediately. Any guards who wish to leave may do so. Those who stay will help rebuild what was destroyed." Word of the liberation spread quickly. Throughout the galaxy, species that had been relocated for helping humanity began to hope. The impossible had happened. Someone had stood up to the Coalition and won, but not everyone was pleased with humanity's return. In the Coalition's capital system, Emergency Session 4471 of the Galactic Council was called to order. Representatives of 100 species filled the Great Chamber, their voices raised in anger and fear. "This is intolerable," screeched Ambassador Quilix of the hegemony. "One human ship has destroyed a Coalition fleet and is now liberating prison worlds. They must be stopped." Chancellor Morth, leader of the Coalition, raised his massive arms for silence. The ancient being had ruled for over a century, growing fat and comfortable on the peace that followed humanity's extinction. "The Third Fleet was unprepared," he rumbled. "We will send the entire First Fleet, 1,000 ships. This human vessel, powerful as it may be, cannot stand against such force." But Ambassador Seelys of the Trader Union stood up, her crystalline form glowing with nervous energy. "Chancellor, what if they're right? What if we were wrong about the humans?" The chamber erupted in angry voices. Seals pressed on despite the shouting. "My people worked with humans for centuries before the war. They were not monsters. They were traders, explorers, scientists. They helped us develop new technologies, opened new worlds to settlement." "Lies," shouted Quilix. "The humans enslaved your people. They forced you to fight in their wars." "No," Seelys said firmly. "We chose to fight beside them because they treated us as equals. Because they shared their knowledge freely. Because they never conquered a world that didn't attack them first." Chancellor Morth's voice boomed across the chamber. The historical records are clear. Humanity was a plague upon the galaxy. We did what was necessary for galactic peace. Then why are the liberated prisoners cheering for them? Celes demanded. Why are species across the galaxy sending secret messages of support? Maybe because they remember the truth we tried to erase. The debate raged for hours. But in the end, fear won over truth. The coalition voted to send the first fleet to destroy the Indomitable and recapture the liberated worlds. Meanwhile, aboard the human supercarrier, families were finally reuniting after 2 centuries of separation. The hydroponics bays had been converted into temporary living spaces for the rescued prisoners. Human children played alongside Cathari younglings while their parents shared stories and tears. Sarah walked through the improvised refugee camps, watching her people begin to heal. These weren't the monsters of coalition propaganda. They were farmers and teachers, artists and engineers, people who had chosen to sleep in the cold dark rather than surrender their humanity. Captain, called Dr. Kim, we're receiving a message from the Free Trader Union. It's encoded, but Athena cracked it. Sarah read the message with growing hope. The Free Traders still remembered their alliance with humanity. They were offering intelligence about coalition, fleet movements, supply routes, and vulnerable targets. Other species were sending similar messages hidden in commercial transmissions and shipping manifests. It seems we're not as alone as we thought, she told her staff. The coalition spent 2 centuries telling the galaxy we were monsters, but some people still remember the truth. The Indomitable continued her journey, liberating prison camps and revealing coalition lies wherever she went. At each world, she left behind not conquest but choice. Species could join the reformed colonial defense force as equals, remain neutral, or even stay loyal to the coalition. But they would know the truth about what had really happened during the human war. Dakwar. Ship's final stop was a small world called Haven. 2 centuries ago, it had been home to the largest human-alien colony in the galaxy. Humans, Cathari, Zelani, and dozens of other species had built a society based on cooperation rather than domination. Now it was empty, except for automated mining equipment. The coalition had strip-mined everything of value and left the world to die. Sarah stood in the ruins of what had once been her daughter's school. Emma had been 7 when they fled Earth. She had loved this place, with its crystal towers and singing gardens. Now those towers were broken stumps and the gardens were barren dust. Orders, Captain? Asked Major Torres. Sarah knelt and scooped up a handful of soil. It was still fertile underneath the dust. Seeds could still grow here, given time and care. Signal, the hydroponics bay. I want seedlings prepared for every species that once lived here. We're going to replant this world. Ma'am? The coalition tried to erase us from history. They thought they could destroy everything we built and make people forget we ever existed. But life finds a way, Major. Even in the darkest places, life finds a way to grow. As the Indomitable settled into orbit around Haven, her manufacturing bays began producing not weapons but farming equipment. Her cargo holds filled with seeds saved from 100 dead worlds. The ship that had been humanity's last fortress was becoming something else. She was becoming a promise, a symbol that some things cannot be destroyed by fire and hatred. That hope can sleep for centuries and wake up stronger than ever. Throughout the galaxy, the message was spreading. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors but as gardeners. They had come home to plant seeds in the ruins of their old dreams and grow something new from the ashes of what was lost. The dead had risen, and they were ready to teach the galaxy how to live again.